Hello, everybody, and I'm Anderson. Welcome to The Road Not Taken, how ordinary people got out of their own way, and you can too. I'm very excited to introduce our guest today. Her name is Anna Mays, Anna Warner Mays, and she's been working in the pharmaceutical industry for over 20 years. After being diagnosed with stage 4 cancer, she decided to fulfill one of her dreams and start her own lipstick company, which is called The Lipstick Journey. Cancer has been part of her story for over 10 years, first diagnosed in 2008. Through her company, she wanted to create a great product, but also help other cancer fighters by donating partial proceeds to cancer organizations she has had personal experience with, and has been involved with everything from creation of the formula, colors, to manufacturing, packaging, and website content. She's married to Jim. They share 5 children in a blended family, live in the Metro Detroit area. Anna, I'm delighted you can join us for the show today.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, as everybody knows listening, so I have one kind of kickstarter question for the conversation, and for you, it was kind of around, if there was sort of one defining moment for you when you decided that you kind of wanted to, in my language, kind of, take the road not taken or get out of your own way. Can you sort of tell us the story, about that day?
Sure. I think you mentioned I'm still working in the pharmaceutical industry, and I did get diagnosed with cancer in 2008. That was kind of a surprise. No cancer runs on either side of my family. And so that derailed me for a little bit, but then I got back on and back to work. Everything was running normal, living in the suburbs, then diagnosed again in 2009, and then again in 2010. But funny enough, each and every time life took a twist, I would just always forge ahead and try to get back to that straight line that I was in of working and being with family. In 2017, however, just in a routine examination, it had been a few years, did a CT scan and found out I had metastatic cancer that had spread to my lungs. So they classified me as stage 4. And I think that, to me, was, funny enough, the biggest wake-up call, despite the fact I had cancer 3 times before. Just kind of put me in a place where I thought, what am I doing with my life? What have I been doing? What do I want to accomplish before whatever? And so that is when I decided to start my lipstick company, because 2 things. I wanted to have a reason that I had kept getting cancer. I wanted a reason for my cancer and a purpose. And I wanted to also, number 2, for people and other cancer fighters to feel like they were not fighting alone, and that we could support each other despite the fact that maybe we don't have any home support or whatever. I just didn't want anyone to feel alone.
So the defining, what was that day? I mean, like, what happened so the day was the day of the diagnosis. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, the stage 4 diagnosis. That was.
So, and again, forgive me for wanting, I don't know, somehow it's the train of thought that fascinates me, and I can't explain why. I just know it does. So you were given the diagnosis, and then when did the idea for the company happen? Was that like as you were driving home, or what happened next?
So the backstory regarding the lipstick was, when I had fought cancer in 2008, 9, and 10, I was emailing people. That was before CaringBridge became popular, before blogging boomed. And so I was emailing people how I was doing, what was happening in my, cancer journey. And then that email happened to spread and spread. People would forward it. So I was getting emails from North Carolinas, from California, from all over the country. And on a personal level, I found myself constantly going to cosmetic counters. And I think it was kind of wanting to feel better.
Sure.
Always loved lipstick. So that was another thing. Because out of college, I felt like it was the one thing I could afford at, let's say, Macy's, or spend my money on.
Sure.
So that was the first place I went to after my initial diagnosis. And throughout that journey, I became friends with the makeup counter girls, and they were my therapy. They were my therapists. I did not have a therapist during that time. So we got to know each other. They would help me. I would say I'm feeling kind of bland today. What color would look good on me? I bought hundreds of lipstick, but they became my, honestly, cheap therapy. And, from that, after the third time in 2010, I thought, wow, I've really been using lipstick to describe my mood to people. Plus, I'm an introvert, so it was my form of expression. And so I decided to publish a book. So I wrote a book and had it self-published. I self-published it. It's called My Lipstick Journey Through Cancer. And that was published in 2011. And it included the emails I sent out, and then a color of lipstick I was wearing and why I was using that color lipstick during my particular point in my journey. So from that book stemmed a blog called Lipstick Journey, or Anna's Lipstick Journey. And I just wrote about life and inspirational things, stories that caught my eye or that I heard about, stories day to day of people. But always end it with a lipstick color, and a review of that lipstick and why I chose it for that story or for that day. So the bottom line, leading up to this, when I got diagnosed, I just thought, well, I'm just going to make my own lipstick and it's going to impact people with cancer. And that's how it was born. That was my turning.
Yeah. And that realization, did it actually hit that day you got that diagnosis, or was it?
I would say it was probably a month after. It took about, because I think the first thing that hit was sadness that I've been fighting for so long. And why can't it just stop? And then it was that tossing in my head, what am I doing with my life? And metastatic is not a great diagnosis. And, I was Googling statistics, even though I was told not to Google statistics, and that looked good. And the bottom line with cancer is time. And the statistics that I was reading about my cancer, I didn't have a lot of time. So I wanted to make the
Anna, you're frozen. Can you see me? Rats. Zoom again. Okay, yeah, you're frozen for a second there. Let's pick things up again. I'm sorry, where you said that the bottom line for you was time. If you could just repeat that line and then carry on. I'm sorry, so that the connection center freeze.
Okay. I just think the bottom line with cancer is time. And so for me, I wanted to make most of my time with family, and also figure out a way that I could impact, at the very least, patients with cancer, battling cancer, and also just maybe impact the world in terms of people's stories and listening to stories. Because I think too, I was still working, we're a busy family, and here I am walking around for a month with stage 4 metastatic cancer, thinking, I may only half the people survive for the next 5 years. And people don't stop anymore. And so I think I wanted to show faces of cancer as well, as part of the bigger story, that we don't know what people are going through just by, snap judgment of, she's got a good job, she's got a beautiful family. We just don't listen to people's stories. So it was a stop and think moment, not just to share my own, but to hopefully share other people's stories of whatever they're battling.
So when you say people don't stop anymore, can you elaborate on that? I mean, I think I know what you mean, but what do you mean specifically?
I think this whole time, and now I've been stable, which we can talk about for a couple of years. I've been stable. That's my right now, meaning my cancer is not really growing. And so I have a great job, great career. And I think people look at me and say, well, you don't look sick and you're still working out, you're still active. I hear it all the time. And so I think the bigger picture is, I think in this society, because we do have a lot of media, social media, so we see the highlight reel of everybody's lives. We think everything's just running smoothly and perfect. And then I think, make snap judgments on people and say, well, their life is perfect or
Mm-hmm.
nothing can be wrong. And so we kind of walk around now as zombies, not really noticing people and not really stopping to listen to their stories. And I think if you did, you would realize, man, everyone struggles with something. Yeah, I think that's the bigger picture of all of this is stories matter and people matter.
So the first thought in my head is, well, maybe you should start a podcast. Because you make it. It's funny that before we started this podcast, I mentioned someone I had coffee with yesterday that I'll be interviewing soon, and I was telling him, that one of the things I love most about talking to people in this format is that yes, I'm interviewing people that have done something pretty remarkable by, virtually anybody's standards, either from where they started in life or because of an adversity that they've had to deal with. And that no one's perfect, that it's virtually impossible to have every area of your life going seamlessly, because if you give tons of attention to one area, then inevitably another area is going to get some neglect.
For sure.
And so if business is amazing, then a health slips a slide or a relationship starts to get ignored, right? So that's what I like about this format, because you're right. I find too much of social media a bit of a downer, because too many people, and again, I'm sure I'm guilty of this as well. You put on the perfect face, or the best family picture, or whatever it is, right. And it creates this false sense of what the real life is, and it doesn't take long for that to get on my nerves. Because it's, as you say, and I assume at some point, sooner rather than later, people will see through that, and actually people will want to see more of a rounded out version of people's lives for them to be credible.
I would hope, but then you talk about, the younger generation, and I think that's all they know.
Yeah.
That's hard.
Yeah. Anyway, so talk about the what's been perhaps for you the most rewarding part of having your own business.
I think the most rewarding part, well, first, I would say being involved with creating the formula of the lipstick. Every step of the way has been rewarding for me. I come from something totally different, and so I had no idea how to do it. And initially, I started with Google, like every other business person starts.
That's funny.
I Googled how to make lipstick because I actually thought, well, I'll just make it in my kitchen. And from there, my background too is I'm biology, chemistry. And so I could figure this out. And so moving on from there, being involved with the logo and the content. Every time something pops up, when I look at my website, for the first time when I looked at it, I thought, I wrote those words. This is amazing. So I think now the most rewarding parts for me is I do give back to 3 organizations that I have personally worked with their journey. And one of them is Immerman Angels, which is out of Chicago, Detroit. And then I have been an angel mentor since 2011. The other one is called Fighting Pretty, and the other one is Twist Out Cancer.
All right. Okay.
So Fighting Pretty gives out these boxes with socks and scarf and makeup to women fighting cancer. So I've been able to put my lipstick in there and send them to people I know fighting cancer, or people in my area, friends, aunts, and every time I send a box, it makes me really emotional. And the first box went to a high school friend who's battling cancer.
Oh, wow.
And she wrote me a beautiful letter, and she said, it's great having support, but when a fighter helps another fighter, it's a miracle. It's a magical. Oh, that was really, it's making me emotional now. And then a couple weekends ago, I had a photo shoot with some other cancer fighters and survivors in this area. And I
saw your blog about that. Yeah. Talk about that. Yeah. Because you mentioned it, but I wanted to hear more about that because of the other people there as well. And this sounds like you got to sort of hear more about their stories as well.
Yes. And so through my Instagram for my lipstick company, we put out a campaign saying, calling all thrivers, because we're thriving through life, we're surviving. And I don't know if people don't like to share their story very much of illness. I don't know, because we didn't get very many people responding. And eventually we had these ladies who did respond and were willing to come out. And so I had a young lady who had breast cancer when she was in her late 20s. She's a survivor. And then I had another lady with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma who was diagnosed just out of college. And she is a survivor. And then there was another lady with not glioblastoma, but a brain tumor who she's just fighting. Mm-hmm. So, and then the fourth lady, she was not a cancer survivor, but she has the BRCA1 mutation. So she's getting probably a double mastectomy and a hysterectomy in her future. She has one child. Mm-hmm. She has alopecia. So her battle has been being a young woman who lost all of her hair and of people and things like that. So it was just an incredible morning and very emotional. Everyone was really emotional that day. And I was so proud to be part of it. And I was so proud to have my company just create that moment. Because again, it's about time and creating these magical moments in time with whatever time you have.
I've got to ask, what was most incredible about it?
I'm getting emotional again.
Sorry.
I think for me personally, the most incredible part about it was that it came from my company that I grew and just seeing these women who had gotten through and are going through things, laughing and feeling beautiful and sharing their stories proudly.
And that ties in beautifully to what you said you wanted to accomplish with your own life after that 2017 diagnosis. Yeah. Right. So what else is on the wish list of things you want to create in addition to, or maybe is it to do other events just like that, or other things that you would love to create to support people in going through the same challenges?
I think my intent for the whole company was not only to give monetarily to the organizations, but also to be hands and feet on the ground, physically helping people with cancer kind of feel like they mattered, feel beautiful, and feel like they're supported. Mm-hmm. So I have, on my wish list for the company is to also visit cancer centers or women battling cancer and beyond, abuse. I come from an abusive marriage previously. Just women struggle, but try to handle so much, I think. And so on my wish list and my vision for the company was to those fighting pretty boxes and my lipstick, bring them to cancer centers, handing them to women who are fighting and sitting, holding their hand, talking, and also putting lipstick on them. Mm-hmm. That's my vision. And we Twist Out Cancer, a woman named August, who is the event organizer, she's here in Metro Detroit, and we check. And I think we have an event coming towards the holidays this year at Gilda's Club, which is, a cancer support center. Mm-hmm. And I think we're going to do something there. So I think that's the start of something beautiful.
What's the plan for that then?
The plan is, I think August is certified like athletic trainer. And so I think she was going to come in and do some health things, like maybe a sit down chair yoga of some sort. I was going to bring my lipstick and maybe a couple of makeup artists who I've met now through all of this and help women, put their makeup on. And we had also talked about a nutritionist or a chef, just kind of a beauty and wellness. That's what we're calling it.
Yeah.
So we've been in touch with Gilda's Club here, and hopefully that all pans out this fall.
Oh, Yeah, that's great. No, actually, I as you know, I interviewed Jenna Ben Shersher from Twist Up Cancer, and she invited me to the Chicago event.
Oh yeah,
in November. So I'm really excited to go to that. And
you should come to Detroit in August. It's this August.
Well, we'll have to talk further about that too. So talk about the external and the internal pieces to surviving and also to the work you do, because it sounds like that as I think, forgive me if I paraphrase it, poorly, but that the lipstick was an affordable luxury that helped you as a coping mechanism and to feel good when you were having difficult days. And then it became so much more than that, because it became relationships you built with other people. Absolutely. And it sounds like really it's a symbol, almost like a metaphor for feeling better. I mean, is that how accurate is that? So what you're saying?
That's pretty accurate, because also beyond that, it had become my way of expressing my internal environment.
Right.
So I just remember when I was going through radiation, I was burning from the inside out, and I felt like a raisin, honestly. I thought, people have no idea that I am all burnt on the inside and I can't eat. I said, I'm turning into a raisin. So I actually went to Bobby Brown's counter and bought those. And I wrote about it, and so it was just the expression. And it's funny when you're wearing like a bright lipstick for a woman, people either look at you or say, wow, where are you going? Well, then that's your opportunity to share what's going on the inside.
Right.
So yes, it was an affordable luxury for me. And it became my expression, outward expression of my internal environment.
Right. And then what else has helped you internally? So the blogging, the sharing your story, the even just reflecting kind of from a beauty standpoint with the lipstick as well, kind of how that reflects how you feel. What other tools have been useful for you? And I mean, because I feel like, well, truthfully, everything you've talked about could apply to anyone that's not feeling great today in terms of a way to feel better. Right. And the funny thing about this is I feel like, in theory, yes, we're talking about, your lipstick company, but it's really what, for anyone listening is sort of what's your version of that picks you up. Because I would it's probably going a bit too deep. I'd even be curious where the lipstick piece comes from in terms of that being a source of comfort. Because I know for me, my source of comfort tends to be, well, nowadays it's reading and listening to music I like in a coffee shop. Like that's my source of comfort. But if I were to be open about it, it was also my retreat from a, fairly unhappy parents, like a fairly unhappy marriage that I grew up in. So my retreat was being in my bedroom, but I never really connected the dots until quite recently, where I realized that now I guess it is a comfort zone, but it's a feel good comfort zone. And it's a positive one. And I typically am reading stuff that's hopefully going to help me grow as a person and then be useful for other people. But anyway, I don't mean to digress and talk about myself here. I'm just saying that this concept, I think, is relevant to everybody listening. It's just a question of how it's applied, and also perhaps being, again, for everybody listening, being more aware about perhaps doing it more often because it feels good. So anyway, it's an awfully long-winded answer. Yeah. I was just curious. I mean, so were the books, was the audio, were the other people, what else helped you, fight cancer, over and over again? Right.
I think, well, first, I'm a Christian, so I believe in God. So a lot of prayer took me through. Definitely prayer. And, the first 3 times I had major surgeries and lots of radiation. So I did have a lot of alone time. I think initially, I was first diagnosed in 2008. My kids were 5, 7, and 10 at the time.
Wow.
So my will to fight was my will to stay as a mother and to be able to see their faces and just be there all, the rest of their lives as much as possible. And so I could not imagine their world without me. Plus, was, as I mentioned earlier, in a difficult marriage. And I just remember saying to myself, there's no way I'm leaving them with him. So that was my reason. Now, even now, they're older, 2 in college already. But when I first got diagnosed in 2017, my daughter was a senior and my youngest was still in middle school. And I thought, if I could just make it to his graduation, then he'd be an adult and he'd have to be able to make his own decisions and be his own life. But now, as I get older, I think if I could just be at their weddings, if I could just see their first child, it just keeps perpetuating.
I love it, yeah.
But definitely the biggest motivation to fight earlier was definitely my kids, and it still is.
Yeah.
And then from there, prayer got me through. I have a group of friends who brought me meals, and they've been great. They've helped me. I did end up going to therapy, which I hated. And then, just being surrounded by great people and a great family. That's helped me. But you talking about the core and the stem of your coffee shop and I was thinking in my head what actually was the pull to the lipstick. And I think growing up an introvert, I was very, very involved in music theater. So I played the piano, I sang, I danced, and I think that was my outlet, but it also allowed me to be a different person on the stage. So I think my pull to lipstick is my pull to be, initially, it was my pull to be more out in the world, more bold and more, and it's funny because I got a sales job right out of college, but to be more confident, like I'm going to put this red lipstick on, I'm going to be confident and I'm going to walk in there, introvert and all, and sell. So that's where it all stems from, I believe.
Wait, so you've had a lifetime in sales, is that correct?
Sales, just different positions in the industry, sales, management, training. So that's what I did with my science degree. But my initial degree that I was going for in college was music theater.
Yeah, I did see that in your bio. And forgive me, I cut it out just only for the purposes of time. But that's actually, I'm sorry, I can't help but smile at the concept. No, I can't help but smile at the concept of incorporating wearing lipstick into sales training. I've been through many sales training and delivered a lot. It's fascinating. One of the things I think I've done, I'm not been as open as I could have been to, is the exterior piece, because I've interviewed a few people now.
Yes.
One's a stylist for women, many of whom are coming through a difficult transition, although I think it's typically more just being new mothers, but also post-accident. And then I don't know, I interviewed someone quite recently who is a makeup artist to celebrities, and it for me it feels like this other planet. But what's fascinating to me is the connections to, or the recognition that both of these people have to the inside job. Well, and also interviewed a plastic surgeon, facial plastic surgeon too. Again, on the surface, it could be, in theory, it could be simply an outside job. Right. But that's never how he talks about his work. He talks about a different person coming into the room afterwards because they feel differently. Anyway, but so I'm just sort of fascinated by this piece. But it sounds like, so what else gave you the confidence to be, to make a career out of sales?
It was never going to be my job when I grew up. I thought, okay, I'm not going to do music theater, so I'm going to be a science major, and I'll figure out what I'm going to do later after I pay back my college loans. And then I thought, when I got the sales job with the pharmaceutical industry, I thought, okay, I'm incorporating science, so I'm going to give back 4 years, since it took me 4 years, and then I'm going to do what I want. But they treated me well. I was super successful. I told my brother, who was a professional actor, I told him, it's the best paid acting job I think I've ever had. So I go, and it's better than what you make. I kept getting promotions, and it just ended up fitting. And really blessing our family with finances and insurance and automotive, everything. And here I am over 25 years later. Different product. I now do molecular oncology. So I work for a company, but yeah, it's just treated me well. And it's just something that I fell into and has kept me.
One of the things I want to go back to is, I can't remember exactly, I know you mentioned this in the context of responses to your event, the photo shoot you did a couple of weeks back, where it sounded like you were a little surprised that more people didn't come forward. And then there was something else you said, and forgive me because I'd have to spend probably 3 or 4 minutes trying to go through notes that aren't the easiest to read. But it's really related to the idea of perhaps people closing up when they're not feeling good, and not incorporating, people and perhaps the support they need, not reaching out. And it's understandable on both levels because, they don't feel good on probably any level. And then the people around them are perhaps feeling uncomfortable and aren't quite sure how to, handle it and interact. It sounds like you chose a different path. Can you explain, how that came about? Because especially since you were introverted, it sounds like the easiest thing would have been to just, hide in a corner.
I think, I'm not sure exactly. I think initially I had just emailed a few people just to let them, one being my boss, but just a couple friends. And then I think I realized early on, the more I talked about it, the more it actually helped other people in a way that what I wanted people to realize was that a lot of the things that we complain about all the time, myself included, is so petty. It's so petty. So I think the more I talked about it and the more people and friends would share with me, well, wow, if I'm having a bad day, there's always someone having a worse day. Or I don't know why I'm complaining about this because shoot, you have cancer. It helped me, help them help me. And I think if you're not saying what's wrong, then you just don't realize how helpful it is for someone to know your story because it helps both of you. And it's hard to express, but
yeah. Well, I am curious, and I'll give you a chance to think a little further because you said forgive me, you said you hated therapy. And this isn't, I'm now taking this opportunity to bash therapists because I know personally and from other people, it can be incredibly helpful if it's, when it's well done. But I could argue, I could say I'm a bit confused, right? So either maybe you just had the bad therapist or it was a wrong match. Because what you just said sounds like one of the benefits potentially to talking about it and kind of getting it off your chest and then saying, and how helpful it can be, or helpful it is, or how important it is not to bottle it up and repress it. So I get it. It's not that important, but I'm curious, right? So what was that? What it was? Was it just poor connection, or was it a different type of conversation that wasn't helpful at the time?
I think it was a different type of conversation because I think when you talk to people who know you, they know all of your background. They know where you came from. They know what you're struggling with your kids and everything. Whereas if you go to therapy, you have to start with the beginning or just keep the concept to exactly what it is that you're talking about. And I have to say, I did not see a therapist initially because of the stigma of seeing a therapist. And my ex-husband was very, how shall I say, strict, rule-based Christianity, kept things in a box. So if I were to see a therapist, I wouldn't be relying on God. And so there was a lot of, mental stuff there that I'm strong enough to do this. The Bible is my, my guide. And so I think I avoided even being in conflict with him at the time because it was a different type of marriage. And so lipstick counters it was. And then I actually have a friend, a really, really close friend who's a therapist who I've known her since my younger days, and we try to do it every year. We try to get together in Chicago as a reunion, friends. And after the third time with cancer, we got together, and she just asked me some simple questions, and I just had a breakdown. And she said, "Please promise me you will see a therapist at least 3 times." That's me. And so she made me promise, and I did it. And so I did see value. And then I just think there is value to it. There is value in speaking your story. Just different periods of my life require different things. And yeah. So I think also you have to find one that fits.
Yeah. And I'm asking again, not to be nosy either, but just for the benefit of people listening, because we all want to have a toolkit of strategies that we can consider are out there for us. And of course, some of the things that we talk about in these shows, some will fit and some won't. And that's inevitable, and that's fine. But again, I think it's just good to know sometimes about options. For focusing, building on strengths as well, because I think that's part of what I'm taking from our conversation too. But then also, what are strategies that are really helpful that other people can think about? So it's, if you might overlook the outer you, then perhaps it would be good to reconsider that, because if you go, in fact, the stylist that I interviewed, she had a brilliant metaphor or example, which she said, well, would you want to have your wedding day be one where you're wearing fabulous clothes that make you look great, or would you want to just show up in some beach clothes and and it's a great example where you make no effort whatsoever to look good on a special day, and that helped kind of register in my mind. So anyway, it was a good example she gave. But so one of the things I wanted to ask you about was it was a quotation you had on one of your blogs, and obviously I'm sure it means something to you, so I wanted to ask you about it. The quotation was, "We have to dare to be ourselves, however frightening or strange that self may prove to be." So can you, again, explain why that resonated with you?
Again, I hate to say this again, but I was a shy introvert, and so that's why I love musical theater so much, because I could be whoever I wanted to be. And I think in my acting days, and even as a salesperson, I feel like we are told that we have to be a certain way to sell, or I felt like I was always acting, or I would always have to be acting like something I was not, to be successful or to be noticed or any of those things. And so that quote to me, when everything's said and done with a stage 4 cancer diagnosis, which, do I have 5 years? Could I have 10? Could I have more? All of that external for me has been just shedding, because it's been a transitional period of who am I? What do I want? Kind of, and it takes too much energy to be other things, and to pretend to be other things, or to try to figure out what the other person wants so that you could be that person for them. It's a lot of energy, which then takes time, and time is precious. Daring to be myself, saying no to things, saying yes to things, that's been a process.
Right. So how are you successful now in sales without having to act?
I think I'm equally successful. I mean, it's been, it's really hard because I can't turn it on and off. I can see it in my posture when I walk into somewhere. But my approach now is probably a little different than it was before. My approach before was, get me to the doctor, let me say what I want to say, you know why I'm here, and get me out of here. My approach now is, well, hey, how are you doing today, Betty? Oh, that's a great haircut. How's the kids? Good, good, good. Da, da, da. And an old vice president of one of the companies I worked for used to say, sell in, sell out, meaning every person in that place matters. You don't know who's going to change something. But I think I'm honestly more attuned to people's stories and the methodology behind why they make decisions, and just more respectful of it. And I will sit more. I used to not want to sit too long in and out. I used to want to just say my piece and get out, which, if you employ, sales approach and target list and all of that, true, success. But I'm having equal success sitting more, listening more, and just appreciating every person and the why behind each of their stories as to why even are you working here? Why are you sticking with this physician? Just things like that. And it's interesting. Answers are always interesting.
So you're asking different, it sounds like obviously, again, I can only think of less, or a slightly cliched language off the top of my head, like creating more authentic relationships and perhaps caring more sincerely. But you did word it better in terms of listening more, and I'm appreciating more, perhaps people's purpose behind what they're doing, which is pretty deep. So it's fair to say you're asking different questions, but it sounds like your attitude has shifted too. You're seeing more of the human being behind the person that the people you're talking to.
Right.
Sounds like you're seeing people differently now.
For sure. And because I'm talking to all oncologists and I'm in all the cancer centers and I have cancer, not all of them know. I don't share that with everybody. But the passion that I have for the end, which is the patient, is crazy. So if I hear something that leads me in a direction to believe that maybe it's about $1 or it's about insurance, I get really hyper passionate. I am the patient. I am the salesperson and the patient at the same time. And I have to say, most of my offices, my accounts, they don't know that I have cancer. And the few that I have told, they go, oh, but I don't want to sell. I don't want to use cancer to sell a product. I just am way more passionate about what I do.
I want to ask you about the word stories, because you used it on your website. And you just used it about a few minutes ago when you said, I now sit more, or you say, I'm more attuned to people's stories. So what's your definition of that word?
My definition is find out where someone came from. As much as you can. Most people, I don't think, will want to talk about their childhood, especially if they're in their 40s, 50s, whatever. Maybe some will, maybe some won't. But even where they came from in the morning, like, I had an accident this morning. And I'm going to be kind of off kilter a little bit the rest of the day because I think we are, because of social media, all of that stuff, we're in a snap judgment society. And so we can look at someone and say, man, she's just not a friendly person. Well, what happened today? What happened in her youth? Or what happened? There's something, I don't know. I was leaving the cancer center a couple of weeks ago, and I was valeting my car, and I was at the valet, and the lady, I gave her my ticket, and she couldn't find the change, and I just said, take your time. But I was there for work, so I'm in a suit, I have my hair, I'm getting my car, and she says to me, don't talk to me, you don't know what kind of day I've had.
Oh no.
I know. And in my head, I wanted to say, this is the same cancer center I'm a patient in. In a month from now, you're going to see me with my sweats on and my, And I said, she says to me, I'm sure, she said, you would never understand how awful my day has been. And I said, you'd be surprised.
You'll have to send her a link to this interview.
I know. I said, you would be surprised. And she goes, I don't think so.
Oh, gosh.
And I didn't sit there to explain. I just thought, okay, she had a bad morning, but she's working the valet at a cancer center. And if you look behind me, everyone bald in a wheelchair, getting sick, has an IV. And, nothing to downplay her story. But if she could realize that everyone has something. Yeah. And it could be for that day, for that moment. So the story to me is what's going on? What's going on with your life? why are you thinking that? Or what happened in your past that leads you to this point?
Mm-hmm. That's absolutely fascinating. It's funny, the word empathy jumps into my head for many reasons, but also because it's something I hear from some of the people I've interviewed, that really the most important character trait either that they need for their work or that they need to train their people on is really that what you're talking about, I suppose, is just, it doesn't really matter what the person's economic situation is.
Right.
They have their background and story and empathy. It's funny. The reason why I asked you about defining story, because it might sound like almost an obvious question, is just because I suppose I've been reading about that topic more recently in a completely different context. In other words, that the story in this frame of reference is more along the lines of the story we tell ourselves that explains to us why we're not where we want to be in life. And that if we really want to make significant changes, we have to start telling ourselves a different story, because otherwise we'll be locked in that story for the rest of our lives. So I'm sharing it partly for that reason, to explain, if you're curious, well, why would you ask me such an obvious question? But along those lines, I'm curious. I've got to believe that I can't imagine you haven't changed your own story about yourself, given the fact that you've, faced your mortality one way or the other. So would you be willing to share how your story, because you don't have to tell us what it was, but can you tell us how your story has changed now as terms of who you are or how you see yourself?
It's been a long road, because obviously coming from an abusive past and being a immigrant from the Philippines and being shy and introverted and just being that first generation. And there's so many pieces to that story. When I was in 8th grade, we visited the Philippines again for the first time. And we stayed a month. And it was a place where I thought I finally belong somewhere. We were we moved to Detroit initially. So we were in a predominantly African-American community. Then we moved to the suburbs, and we were in a predominantly white community. So I never felt like I was always feeling like I had to explain myself and say, yes, English, all of that stuff. So when we went back, I came when I was 3 years old. Went back and I was 14. I did not want to come back to the States. And I told my parents, leave me here with Grandma. I will stay here. I belong here. I'm loved here. I matter here. We're all the same. I love it. We're all the same. And my mom, she said to me, that's fine. We're going to go back. And she said, but here's what I want you to do. I want you to be involved in as many things as possible in school for the next year. She said, join every club, join the choir, do everything you can. Persevere, overcome and persevere that. She said, after 1 year, if you still want to go back to the Philippines, you'll go. Well, after I got involved in everything, I never wanted to go back to the Philippines. Now I was entrenched into the society that I was in. And so that piece changed my story. But every time I feel like I'm stuck or stuck in a story, I hear my mom's voice. Try this for 1 year. Entrench yourself. Find something you're passionate about. Do that. And then see where you are. Persevere. Overcome. Persevere. And that, I feel like, has taken me a long way. With the previous marriage, I think I was played in terms of my insecurities. I mean, like everything else. So it took a while to regain my confidence and everything back from that. And then I found this amazing man, and he's been helping me build up. And then the hard left was the diagnosis.
Right.
Truly is when I realized we can do what we want. I mean, it's like, well, what are you passionate about? I have my oldest son is going to be a senior in college, and he's struggling with, do I want to be a physical therapist? I don't think that's going to school for it. I don't know if that's what I want to do. And I said, you know what? Nothing's permanent. If you want to change your mind, change your mind. And so I said, in my head now, you can, no one's, I mean, there are people stuck financially, whatever, but small changes, like my mom said, involve yourself in something you're passionate about, whether it's on the side or whatever, and see where you are in a year. Overcome, persevere. That was her thing.
Well, it's interesting. I know it's funny. I'm reminded of one of the big insights I got from an interview. I released it yesterday, but with someone who, I mean, it sounds unrelated, but his specialty area, innovators in business. And it was actually a personal development conversation piece that we were having at that particular moment about, I guess, a cycle where there's one person's the victim, one's the enabler, and one's the persecutor, I believe. But he said that the best innovators, so in other words, the most successful entrepreneurs, don't live in that vicious cycle of, I guess, unhealthy relationships, and that when they're stressed or under pressure, they create. Mm-hmm. And that's what I'm reminded of in what you're saying, is that actually you've got, thanks to your mother, maybe a really positive trigger mechanism that when times are tough to launch something else and to get out there, which is pretty amazing. And it's fantastic advice, frankly, for anyone, which is one of the reasons I'm sharing it again. And also because it resonated with me. You know, I mean, I was having a really awful day yesterday, in fact, come to think of it. And that's what I kept reminding myself was, you know, if there's nothing you can do about that situation at that moment in time anyway, what would be the most useful thing to do? Right. And I'm thinking, create. So I had a remarkably productive day, you know, after a wobbly hour or so at the beginning.
Exactly.
So anyway, but I kind of love what you're saying. So that's part of what you're saying is the story that's helped empower you. Is to get busy doing something you really like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's always just a slight step over. It's not, oh my gosh, I have to sell everything, get my finances together to start this lipstick company. Sometimes it's just a slight step to the right. You don't have to change your whole world to change the direction of your story. You know.
What's the vision you have for the lipstick journey?
The vision I have for the lipstick journey is really simple. It's really to be able to, exactly what I said, help others who are fighting cancer, whether it be financially or it be physically, to be there for someone, to give someone lipstick. I love when people buy my lipstick and they put it on and they send me a picture of seeing the end product or hearing the story of the woman who got the Fighting Pretty box from her sister who had me send her one with my lipstick. So my vision is really simply that. Do I envision being L'Oreal? I don't. I also would love, every time I write a little thank you note when someone orders a lipstick, I want to hear their story. So I always say, please share your story. No one has shared their story. And so I would love, not on a podcast like format, but to see written word of people's stories and how and why they bought the color they bought and how it made them feel, or just that. I mean, I'd love to see people connected.
That makes sense, to get kind of more feedback and build that community piece too, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, well, for me, again, first thing that pops into my head is something you said earlier about how crazy busy everyone is. That's people don't stop anymore. I think that's one of the challenges is getting people to take that time to stop so they can actually think about, giving feedback, but maybe there's ways to make it easier for people. I don't know. So who knows? Anyway, then that's amazing. So just, I guess, in wrapping up, 2 or 3 final questions. So first one's, I mean, I suppose it's a bit deeper, but and maybe it ties into the story, but who would you say you've become since in the last 10 years, since your first cancer diagnosis?
In the last 10 years, I'd say I'd become stronger, more confident enough to not wear lipstick sometimes. And just more confident in myself and more at peace with exactly who I am. People always, if you're fighting something, it could be, fighting back from whatever, people always would comment like, oh my gosh, you're so strong. And I used to go, I'm just doing what I need to do just to get by for my kids, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Now I look back and I think, yeah, I'm like Wonder Woman. I mean, I feel like things constantly get thrown at me, and that whole piece of rise above, persevere, that's my mom. But yeah, I feel like I have become stronger, more confident in myself.
It's funny, now I realize there was something else I'd wanted to ask a little bit earlier when you were talking about. So one of the things that strikes me, is you talked about the power of the importance of time and how it's undefined and unpredictable. What do you say to people that haven't had a cancer diagnosis in terms of that urgency? I'm also reminded of a Wayne Dyer quote from many years ago where he said something like, don't wait for I don't know these exact words, I'm paraphrasing, but something like, don't wait for a cancer diagnosis to start doing what you love in life, for example. Right. And I think every human being can relate to that. And I still remember on my weaker days, this was quite a long time ago, let's say, when I first read the quote, but I remember thinking there's still this wall of fear that all of us can be put off by. It definitely sounds like, well, you've faced that and walked through it many times, and I don't pretend that I'm sure there's days when it doesn't exist, but at the same time, you have done it. What do you say to the people though that haven't had that close sort of call with their fatality to get off their backsides and find that impetus to take action? Because I think you must have had this, must have been asked this before, or I don't know, thought of, what do you say to that?
Well, I first want to shake them and say, excuse me, you have this moment right now, because there's a lot of talk. Even my husband was talking about when we retire. I'm like, when we retire, why are we waiting when we retire? Why can't we just go to Spain now? Because I just tell people, you just never know. Life can change in a blink. I got the first time the doctor came into the room and said, yeah, you have cancer. It's a blink. It's 1 second. Changes your whole trajectory. I heard a quote as well. I can't remember who. But anyway, she was saying in her speech that everyone's dying. Everybody's dying. But we really are we're really either alive or we're dead. So what are you going to do while you're alive? And we get caught up in plans and when this happens, when that happens. And with or without the diagnosis, who knows if that's going to happen? So to just really, truly live out each moment and look for the magic in each moment. Because, I could see the girl was going to hit me this morning. Her car was coming my direction. Mm-hmm. And I just thought, well, this is going to happen. And I didn't cry. Nothing happened to me. I just thought, okay, well, 10 minutes from now, we'll be in a parking lot. My car will be towed, and just logically thinking through things. But truly, we're alive right now. So soak it all in.
Thank you. It's very moving. It's really, really clubbing me over the head that, you, as you said, that lots of things have happened to you to give you an incredibly compelling purpose to make a difference. So I guess along those lines, how can people learn more about you and, be part of more of what your journey is in terms of the work you're doing, in terms of, how can people learn about your company? And then, I guess there's nothing wrong with even saying, there are other things that you would be helpful to you besides people, obviously investing in the products that you put together.
So to learn about my company, you can go right on the company website at thelipstickjourney.com, and you can see a little bit of my story there. I'm on Instagram at The Lipstick Journey. And then to really follow my true journey, I have my personal blog, which I've had since 2011. Mm-hmm. That is lipstick-journey.com.
Is that the same one that's on your company website, or is it separate?
So it's separate, but similar. So on the company website, I've written separate little blogs.
Okay.
But my personal website gets a little bit more in depth, and sometimes I do cut and paste just pieces of that personal blog.
Got it. Brilliant. Okay. Well, it's been a real honor to spend some time with you and hear about your amazing courage and inspiring message that certainly, everybody can benefit from. So if you think of other ways, or if anyone's listening that would, think this would, could be, there's an audience that would really benefit from hearing this, because it gives them the perspective that they need to take more action and to be more of who they really are, then please follow through and get in touch with Anna. Otherwise, Anna, again, massive thank you for joining us. The show notes, for those listening, it's on the website, matt-anderson.com, matt-anderson.com. And Anna, best of luck with everything you do in the future.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you.